Hey folks, in this video we're going to go over the proper plant care, fish care and maintenance and stocking, and also pond maintenance. Normally the first things that people get interested in and once they get a pond is how much care and maintenance is involved in a pond. And I basically tell them if you do the right stocking of the plants, the fish, and the right sizing of the pump and filter, you've got minimal maintenance. But the one maintenance item that you definitely will have in a pond at some point in time is going to be a clean out. So basically that's one of the first things that we're going to talk to you about is how to properly come in and do a good clean out on your pond. And everybody asks them, well gee, what's the right time of year to do it? And basically to me this is the right time of year. If you look at the fish, you can see how they're just kind of laying low. They don't have a whole lot of activity and movement, and that's really the best time to handle these fish. When the water temperatures are a little cooler, you can move them around and they can get jostled a little bit more, and it doesn't stress them out quite as much. So I use a rough rule of thumb. Anytime the leaves have all fallen off of the trees, then it's a good time to get in and get in there and do a complete pond clean out. And basically when I talk about a complete pond clean out, I mean sucking the thing dry, shop backing out the bottom, removing the fish. I mean just a complete and total draining of the pond. And I'm going to show you the basic essential tools that you're going to need to do this kind of project. The first thing that you're going to need is a good heavy-duty shop vac. Basically this shop vac, it is going to allow you to come back in and suck up all the sludge and the rotting leaves and debris and detritus that's accumulated in your pond over the years. You're also going to, you're going to need a good heavy-duty pump. And basically what I'll tell people, if you are doing this in the fall or the early spring when your water temperatures are still really cool, you can take the pump that's normally running your waterfall and get you an extra section of hose and just connect it to your pump, drop it in, and get a long enough hose so that you're not dumping it right out into the edge of the yard. You can run it on out somewhere further so that you get good drainage. So, get you a good extension of hose so that you can run the water away from the yard and not create some flooding elsewhere. Of course, once you get the water level drawn down, you're going to need to catch your fish. This is like a good hunting gun. You don't want to go elephant hunting with the 22, and you don't want to go do anything with any size larger net than you need. So basically, as you can tell, the fish that we're going to be dealing with in our particular pond are some really nice large koi. 18 to 20 inches is the maximum size. So this net would be adequate for us. So we're going to use this net for our fish. But if you've got some smaller fish, a little smaller type net with goldfish or shabunkins, is going to be adequate. The next thing I look for here again is a container to keep the fish in. As long as you take some of your pond water, take your pump, run some of the original pond water into the basin or container, whatever you're using, and fill it up with water. As you catch the fish, you're going to put them in water, and here again you're lessening the shock. You're using the same water that they came from back into the container, because you can look at really this is going to be quite a shock going from a small, you're going from this large pond into a smaller basin like this. So you want to do it when it's cool, use the same water. And another thing that we do is I keep some kind of a net so that when we fill this thing up with water, we put the fish in it, I come back in and lay a net on top of it. The goldfish and the shabunkin varieties aren't near as bad, but when you get some of the koi, they can get quite rambunctious, and they'll want to jump sometimes and flop out, especially if you're doing this in the warmer temperatures. And there again, that's why I always caution about trying to do this in a warmer temperature. And if you do it in a warmer temperature, if you absolutely have to, try to get some type of a tranquilizer that you can put in the water to help calm the fish. But with our temperature, we're in probably the 50s. We're going to have some good results and not a lot of activity from the fish. So we're going to fill this up. Another thing that I'll do, and this time of year here again, it's not as critical, but I'll take a little bubbler, a little aquarium bubbler with an air stone, and as I fill the the bucket up with water. I'm going to lay my air stone in there, connect it, plug in my bubbler, and make sure that we've got plenty of aeration. You just don't know what kind of problems you might have, so you're going to be prepared that if you have to extend this out over a day period, that the fish are going to be safe. So I'll fill it up with water, put in my air stone, get my bubbler going, you know, collect my fish, put them in, and then after I finish with all the fish, I'll come back in and spread my netting over it and anchor it down so that if they do try to jump out, they you know, they're not going to be able to get out and harm themselves. So we've got all the essential elements that we need, so we're going to get started. All right, as you can see, we're just bringing some of our original pond water, and I'm filling up our vat. So as soon as we get our little holding tank here ready, we'll get our bubbler app put in and get the pond lowered. Don't get in a big rush to start trying to catch these fish. I mean, it's cold, the water temperatures are cold. You know, get it down to 6 or 8 inches so you don't stress them out chasing them everywhere. All right, as you can see, we've got our tub full and we've got our bubbler going. You can see how well this little air stone is working. And like I said, if you're doing this in the warmer temperatures, this is an extremely critical factor to make darn sure you've got good aeration going in here. And even as many fish as we've got, if this was in the warmer months, this would be marginal as far as aeration. So I just can't stress to you enough how careful you need to be if you're handling some large fish and how much supplemental aeration you need to add if it's in the warmer months. But with our cooler temperatures like we are, this is going to be plenty. So we're going to continue to draw down our pond, and we'll catch our fish, and we'll show you how these guys stock in here. All right, while we're waiting for our pond, the water to drain in our pond, get low enough to catch our fish, we're going to step up here and continue to be productive. This is the waterfall that goes into the pond below, and you can see we've got a lot of algae and dead leaves and just debris that's just blown in here and accumulated over the winter. So we're just going to take the shop vac and here again, just vacuum out everything that's loose. I'm not going to come in here and take a pressure washer and wash all this algae out. I want to leave a lot of it and a lot of the bacteria that are in here. So we're simply just going to vacuum out what's loose. I'll take the water hose and wash it down again and vacuum it a little bit more, but we want to make sure we don't completely kill any of the bacteria and all of this algae that's growing in the waterfall. If you've got some of the filamentous type algae, you know, you can do some things like sprinkle some uniodized salt and let it sit for an hour, and that'll kill the filamentous algae. There's some new varieties of algicide that particularly attacks the filamentous that you can use as well. So if you're going to do some of those treatments, you know, now is a good time, you know, once you get the pond good and clear. But for right now, we're just going to go ahead and take the shop vac and just suck all the sludge and the debris that's left in the bottom of the pond. There you go. Now hand them to me. There we go. All right, good. And I'll work slowly. All right, you can see as we've gotten the water level down now, we've got them crowded up. The water is good and cold, so they're not really stressed, and it gives us enough depth so that we can come in and slowly pick them. The key is just pick them up and gently place them in. And you can see they're cold, so they're not getting overly excited. So this is exactly what we want. So just make sure you get all the placement in here and do it slowly and gingerly so that you don't cause any scale damage and they don't do a whole lot of flopping. All right, I'm going to give you a little quick tidbit before, and we're going to discuss this when we talk about the fish, but this is a bluegill or a brim. Lapomus macrochirus is actually the genus and species, but I will normally put one of these fish in a pond, and basically I put this fish in for population control. Oh, come in here. Here we go. Oh, we've got one last catch. Here's our little frog, and you can see they're just really slow this time of year. So these guys just they can come to the pond, or you can actually put a little bullfrog tadpole in there. And this is actually is an American bullfrog. You can see the coloration on him. So we're going to do the same with him. We're just going to put him in there with our fish so he stays happy. All right, we've got all our pond drained down, and now we're going to go ahead and take what plants we have in here out. This is a regular lotus, which is a hardy plant, and you can see it's completely dormant. It's died back for the winter, and we're going to set all these out, and later on in the video we're going to go through how to break up and maintain your plants. So this is going to be part of our video in just a little while, but we're going to go ahead and now that we've gotten all the water out, you can see all the sludge and the leaf and all the debris that's accumulated through the summer. So this is what we will come in and finish and touch, is we just vacuum all the dead and rotten debris off of the bottom, and we'll wash the sides of the algae and the debris that's accumulated on the sides, but I never come back in and pressure wash or use chlorine or bleach on any of these, because you've got a lot of natural bacteria and beneficial algae that are actually growing along the sides of the pond, so you really don't want to kill those. All right, now that we've gotten all our fish and frogs and everybody's here in their little tight quarters, we're going to go ahead and cover this with a net. And if you don't have a net this large at home, you can use something as simple as a piece of plywood. You know, it's just something to keep them from jumping out, but also the more shaded and darker you can keep it, the less excited the fish are going to get. So it's not a bad idea at all to, you know, even if you've got a net to lay over it, if you can get another darker cloth to lay on it so that you know, they don't get as much sunlight, they'll stay, you know, they'll get less excited. But as long as we keep them in here and keep it covered, you know, we should be fine for the next couple of hours till we get the pond ready. We're going to go over a little bit of plant care and maintenance, and what we're going to talk about real quickly here is just how to repot some of your plants. And this is a hardy water lily, and this is what I always like to point out to people. You know it's time to repot your plant when it starts distorting your pot. You can see how this was a rounded pot and how the lily has actually pushed its way, and if we don't repot this plant right now, by next summer it's going to be grown over and out of the pot, and of course it's not going to bloom as well because it's not going to be getting as many nutrients as it would be if we had it in the pot where we could fertilize it. So we're going to go ahead and repot this plant, and the first thing that I'm going to do is just dump it out of the pot completely. Once I shake it out, you know, it's even more visible. You can see how the tubular is actually pushed to this end of the plant. And what I'll do is once I get the pot out, I'll stand here and break up all the old plant around it, and then basically just end up with just a little root ball. And you can see from looking at this, we're going to be able to break this plant into about 4 new plants. And out of the old rhizome, you've got little nubs that are actually coming out, and here's one. And you can see how well this new rhizome is actually started. So we've got one there, we've got another one on this end, and I'll actually just break the rhizome, hold on to it. Up on the tip of the plant, you can see I've got a good base growing on this one, and then another strong root section on the very tip. So what I'm going to do is come back in, and I'm going to just go ahead and save this one since I've got a good big root ball, and I'm going to actually plant it in a little bit larger pot. I like to use a pot that has more horizontal surface for a hardy lily, because it likes to travel across the top of the plant. Or the top of the pot. So we want to get us a pot rather than having one this size. This is what you're going to normally get from a lot of your aquatic nurseries. When you have to repot that plant, let's bump it up into something that's going to have, you know, a little bit more surface area, so you're not going to have to be repotting this plant but about every 3 to 4 years. So I'm going to take this plant, and then I'm using a mixture of some good filtered topsoil and sand to keep it light and airish, but there's also some really good quality repotting soils that are available at some aquatic nurseries. I use this mix because I've got so many plants that I use so much of it. I get bulk loads of this in, but as long as you get in here and you get you a good quality topsoil, that can be just as good. But you want to go ahead and add the soil to it and get it almost to the top of the pot. You don't want to bring it all the way over. You want to leave a little bit of room to put a layer of gravel to discourage any fish burrowing inside of your inside of the pot itself. All right, you can see we've gotten all of our dirt in the pot, and we left ourselves a couple of inches. So I'm going to come back in here and dig a hole enough to get these long root portions so we can get them all the way down. But also, before I do that, I'm going to take some of the aquatic fertilizer tablets and just push them down in the pot. You can see we want to bury them so that we're going to be able to get the roots to be able to penetrate. They're going to be going deep to get some nutrients, and then we're going to come back in, keeping the roots in and keeping the tuber above the dirt level. You don't want to bury it, you want to keep it above it. And then I'm going to come in the side and take my finger and poke a hole and then push these tablets down in it and then cover them back up. You want to use a good aquatic fertilizer that has a higher middle number. Normally the aquatic fertilizer is a 10-25-10, which nitrogen being the first number, phosphorus being the middle number, which is the bloom producer, and then potassium being the last number, which is normally for root growth. So you want to get a little bit higher number as far as the aquatic fertilizer goes, because that gives you a good bloom number. But basically, once you get it in, leave the tubular where it's right above the top of the dirt. You don't want to drown it out at all with the dirt. Make sure all the leaves and everything are exposed. And then I'll even come back in with some gravel. And here again, topping the plants with gravel not only helps any, when you drop the pot in, from getting a lot of dirt distributed in the column, it also helps discourage the fish from burrowing around. But one thing I can tell you, if you do have large koi, this smaller pea gravel isn't large enough. You need to make sure that you get some really large rocks. And I say large rocks, basically about golf ball size, because the koi can come in and suck these little pebbles up and spit them out as fast as you put them in. So you need to make sure, if you've got koi, you use a much larger size gravel. But once we get it in, top it off with the gravel, well, you can go ahead and drop this back in the pond, and you should be good for the next 2 to 3 years without repotting this hardy lily. Hey folks, what I'm doing is what you should be doing with any of your any landscaping plants, is come back in and trim off any old or dead foliage and debris that's building up in your plant. Just like any terrestrial plant, you need to trim out this dead plant material, because it can only encourage predatory insects or insects that can come in and cause some damage to your plant. So once a month when you come in to fertilize these marginal plants like this, just pick them out of the pond and kind of just go through them and trim off any dead foliage or vegetation. Like I said, it's just going to cut down on the amount of disease and infestations with insects you can have. Once I've pretty well done that, I mean, here again, there's even some little trash plants growing along the margins of it. Just pull all of that out. You don't want anything competing with your plant. This particular plant is called an umbrella palm, and actually it's in the flowering stage now. It doesn't have what we think of a normal flower with really nice big blooms and pretty colors. This basically is the bloom, just the little fluffy, frondy nodules that are coming up top. And basically the flower or the plant is in the flowering stage now. And if you wanted to, once this plant has has bloomed out and you got a big full head up there, if you wanted to propagate this plant, another way to do it as well as dividing, is to cut the plant stem off and actually just lay that plant down in the edge of the water, and it would pop out some roots, and within a couple of weeks you'd have another plant that you could actually repot. But once I've finished all of my trimming of the plant and gotten all my dead foliage and vegetation off, I'll come back in there again with a more of a well-balanced fertilizer. And because this plant has been in the pot for a while, I know it's root bound, so I'm going to take my screwdriver and push it in there and wallow it around a little bit, and take the fertilizer tablet and push it down. You know, and here again, my rough rule of thumb is I like to get it to that first knuckle depth and then push the dirt back on top of the tablet, because you don't want this tablet to be dissolving and getting in the water and causing you problems with the water quality in your pond. So, you know, like I say, once a month, trim your foliage down, dead vegetation off, put you a balanced fertilizer in it, and you're good to go for at least another month. All right, we're going to talk about now one of the marginal hardy plants that go along the edge of your pond. You know, a bog plant, marginal plant, anything that grows along the edges of a lake is what is called a marginal or a bog type plant. They don't normally like to be deeply submerged, but just more or less keeping their roots wet to maybe an inch or two under the water, these plants will do fine. This particular plant is an aquatic ginger. It has nice white blooms on it. It has a great smell. You know, you can take the leaves and just pull them through your hands, and it's got some really good aroma. But what we're going to do with any of these plants is, again, that when it gets real tight, you may have to take a little razor knife and just make a slit and open the pot up just a little bit and pull the plant out. And you can see we're really root bound. You see how these roots are running the top of the plant. So basically we want to come in, just pull all the dirt out of the plant, kind of shake it off, and you can see you've got some natural divisions where the plant itself has been, you know, has been growing in separate areas. And using that same little razor knife, just come in here and make you some cuts in that plant rhizome, and then you just take your hand and twist it a couple of times, bend it, shake it. See how easy it works? But the problem with this one is we've got so much root growth on these sides, you can't break it apart. So once I cut through those, you get a much easier handle. There we go. So now we're going to separate this one plant. And I've basically used the same type of a pot that we had before. We've got some holes in the bottom, and a lot of time I'll use those because if the water level gets below the top of the pot, you're able to wick up some water through these holes, so you don't have to be, you know, as concerned if the water level in your pond drops. But you can see how deep the roots are on this plant. Doing the same thing, just coming in and getting some, you know, a little bit of soil mixture in here, and once I get it fairly close, I just come in, pull my dirt back, and do the same thing, take some of my fertilizer tablets and push them down in the bottom, dig it back, and with these plants, because they don't travel like the lily does, you just basically center it in the pot, put it in there, get just a little bit more soil, make sure you got some good coverage on your roots. Press it down really well because you're going to absorb a lot of water, and then just come back in again with a little gravel mix and sprinkle on top, and you're ready. You can see how quick and easy that was, and with that one plant, you know, I'm probably going to come up with 4 plants all together. So when you get in the process of doing this, be sure and call your you know, your other pondering friends and tell them you're splitting plants, and you guys can swap out plants if they got some varieties you don't have. But basically the only thing that you have to remember and worry about in repotting any aquatic plants is, as long as you don't let those roots dry out, you can't kill these plants. I mean, it's extremely difficult. So if you have to pull the plant out and it's a day or two before you get to repotting the rest of the plants, just take the rest of the root ball and drop it in a bucket and add some water to it, and that plant's just going to be as happy as it can be if you leave it in there for a while. It's not any big rush. So just do a little quick, simple repotting method, and that's all you're going to have to do with repotting your plants. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about the types of fish that you can put in your pond, and really it's a personal preference. A lot of people want to ask, well, gee, what fish can I put in my pond? You know, what varieties are best? And honestly, that's a personal preference. You can put, you know, any types of fish in your pond, and they're going to survive over the winter as long as they are a hardy variety. And these are, actually, I've got two types of really goldfishes in here. One of them is a shibunkin, and the shibunkin can usually be, you can tell those by the specks and the shiny scales on them. The other ones that I have in here are the one with the longer fantails, and then the white and the reds are actually Sarasa comets. And there's different in variety numbers of Sarasas, and usually you've only got one variety of shibunkins. They can come in different colors, but Sarasa comets can come in a lot of different nomenclatures, you know, regular, commons, but I really do like the fantail Sarasas because they have a much prettier and overall look of the fish. You know, these all cohabitate and do extremely well with all of their goldfish cousins. They do well with koi. The only problems that I've ever seen is sometimes people will have some golden orphies, and they just don't do well. They don't play well with their friends, let's just say that. So usually they bully all the other fish around and will eat all the food. So as long as you get a goldfish variety or one of the kois, they do extremely well together. Basic care for these fish are really no different than any of the other types of fish that you're going to keep in your pond. You know, basically feeding with a fairly good higher protein diet during the summer. Of course, during the fall, you want to switch over to a lower protein diet and only feed probably every other to every third day. And then normally, you know, when the water temperature drops below 50 degrees, just seesaw feeding altogether. And not saying it's not going to hurt to step back in periodically and feed those fish whenever you have some really warm days. But all in all, don't worry about you know, skipping a day or two and feeding your fish. If you're gone on vacation, they've even got little feeder blocks or even little 21-day feeders that you can set a timer that it'll actually kick on and feed your fish. But you'd really be surprised how much natural food is available that actually falls into the pond. So these fish aren't going to starve to death, I assure you. They're not like your dog or cat, and they're not going to run away and go to some neighbor's house and let them feed them. They're going to stay right there. Feeding once a day is all you really need to do during the summer, and during the winter you basically can just seesaw feeding below 50. What we have here are three different coloration patterns of koi. And that's one thing about koi. There are over 250 different color patterns and scale patterns with koi. So if you really go to your pet shop or your aquatic center and you can find no two koi will ever be alike. So that's why I always encourage everybody when you get ready to add fish, go and buy one that you don't have. Get a good color pattern that you haven't seen before. You can always tell the koi, if I can get these guys to cooperate, there's a little small, people want to call it a whisker, but technically an ichthyologist is going to call it a barbel. And the koi always have a barbel that hangs off the bottom of their lip. So they're easily to distinguish between any other variety of goldfish. The koi are the only ones that have these barbels off the end of their lips. So anytime you see those, you know that you're dealing with the koi exclusively. These are great fish to put in a pond. They do well with any of the other goldfishes. The key to the koi is making sure that you get not only the koi but any of your other fish from a good reputable dealer that does a good job of quarantining fish and keeps them in a system that's recirculating, that's well filtered, and does a good weekly maintenance on their vat system. There's nothing worse than getting a new fish that introduces diseases. In fact, a key question to ask anytime you buy any fish is where is their isolation vat. You want to make sure that anytime any fish are brought into a sales facility, they're able to keep those fish and they keep them away from all of their other sales stock so that they don't introduce any diseases. By quarantining the fish for 1 to 2 weeks at minimum, giving them antibiotic treatments and good heavy salt treatments, they're able to kill off any parasites and kill any outside diseases that might be introduced to their stock. So anytime you go to purchase new fish for your pond, make sure it's from a good reputable dealer that has a really well taken care of fish house. So if you'll follow those few simple rules, you can really have some good healthy fish. Another question that people will ask me is how many fish can I put in my pond? And basically, you're going to see a lot of rule of thumbs. Oh, you can have 1 inch per 100 gallons. And honestly, that's a completely arbitrary figure. I mean, there's never been any research or documentation to say that you can only have 1 inch per 100 gallons. It's just not true. That is solely a factor of filtration. How well is your pond filtered? How much are you turning that water over through this filter? Everything is dependent in that pond by how well that filtration is. I used to have a professor at Auburn that said you could raise them in a pickle jar as long as you did the filtration right. And basically he's correct. You can keep those fish alive and doing well. As far as the koi go, physiologically, they're not going to be able to grow basically any greater than 18 inches if your pond depth is no more than 18 to 20 inches. But for a koi to reach full physiological development, they need to have a 3 to 4 foot depth. But for just a regular ornamental garden pool, that we primarily construct, a pond 18 inches is more than adequate to be able to allow these fish to grow up to an 18 to 20 inch body size. So, there again, fish handling and fish health is really important, and just choose your fish wisely and get a good variety, and I think you can really give them a happy home. Hey folks, we wanted to go over some filter options for you real quick, and sometimes filtration can be as simple as a pot with one of these real coarse filter pads and the pump situated down in the pot. Here again, you're going to have to know your exact situation, how many gallons, how heavy a fish load, how much sunlight you have. All of these determine, how much filtration you have, because, the biggest problem that pond owners have is green water. So certainly filtration is the way that you're going to alleviate and help eliminate that problem. So smaller biological filter like this does great if you got a smaller pond. Another type of a filter here, this is actually a pressurized system where your water is coming in, water is returning, and then there's actually one that's for back flushing that you can actually dial it and back flush these systems around. So if you've got an area that you don't want to have to get in the pond any more muss and fuss than you have to, these smaller pressurized type systems are really good, because it allows you to actually back flush the pads without getting in the pond and moving them around. You can even bury the unit in the ground adjacent to the pond. So these are nice systems. If you get up into a larger pond where you've got 5,000–10,000 gallons and you're carrying a much heavier fish load, these bubble bead filter systems are really nice. They act as somewhat of a particulate filter, because the small media that they use in here for biofiltration also compacts tight enough that it will collect some of the suspended material that's in the pond, and so it will also be of assistance in filtrating out some suspended solids from the pond. But also all the beads that are in here also provide incubation sites for all the nitrifying bacteria, which can help remove that nitrogen. So a system like this is good, especially for folks that have a heavy fish load and are more into keeping their koi, and they can't have any other type of oxygenators or water hyacinth or anything else that's going to help suck out that nitrogen, they're going to have to go with a much larger external type of a filter. Kind of the last option that I throw out to folks are these UV lights, which is an ultraviolet light. And basically, the way that these lights work is they actually sterilize the water. When the water comes in this end of the tube and passes down the cylinder, there's a ultraviolet light which actually irradiates the algae, the virus, and the bacteria, and technically sterilizes the organism so it's not able to replicate itself. So these systems are good if you're in a system that's hard to come back in and add one of these other filter types, and you just want to put something on there that's going to go ahead and take care of the problem. The two types I have, this one is a submersible unit. You can actually hook the tubing in, the tubing out, and drop this whole unit down in the pond, which works great for more of a formal type pond where you don't have an area close by that you can hide any tubing coming in and out of the pond. This other unit is a unit that sits on the side of the pond, but they both work by the same principle. But either way, when you use an ultraviolet light, you still got to have some other type of biological filter media that's going to help break down this nitrogen. So just simply sterilizing the water is going to keep it clear, but you still need to remove those nitrites that can accumulate in the pond. So it's really important that you do some other biological filtration with these type of systems as well. But all in all, those are your options, and with any of these, either one or in a combination can give you some great results as far as giving you much clearer and cleaner water. All right, as you can see, we've gotten the pond cleaned out, vacuumed out, hosed the sides down, didn't use any pressure washer, no chlorine, no bleach. We want to keep this thing as alive as possible. We're just refilling, of course, using chlorinated water. We're ready now. We've got enough water depth that we can put the fish back in the pond. My feeling always is the sooner and the quicker you can get these fish back in the pond, the less stress they're going to have. Sure, they're only going to have 6 or 8 inches to swim around, but that's better than being confined in the small tub, with all the other fish. You want to use a dechlorinator, certainly, and you can continue filling with the chlorinated tap water. What I prefer to use, if you're just filling the pond up and just doing a maintenance replenishing of water, and you're only adding a couple of inches once a week, just a standard heavy metal chlorinator neutralizer is good enough. But anytime I handle the fish like I've done, and I've caused them a little bit of stress, I like to use one of the little more lotion type products, which is this particular one is called a stress coating. A lot of manufacturers have different varieties and names for them, but basically it has a skin conditioner or a scale conditioner in there that helps replenish the slime coating as well as neutralizes the chlorine. So anytime you do a complete and total pond clean out, get one of the more delicate type of a dechlorinator that'll actually help replenish slime coating as well. So we've already added enough of the stress coat to neutralize the chlorine as it fills up. So this pond's ready to be restocked. So Fernando, we're going to go ahead and again restock the fish the same way that we took them out. Is we'll take a few at a time and just gently put them in the pond. So doing again the same procedure, just slowly picking them up and handling them carefully and picking up just a couple at a time. You don't want the guys to get in there and fight and beat each other up, so you just gently release them back in the pond. So again, following the same procedure, these fish are going to be doing great. And they've gone through a little bit of stress, but it's not anything that's really been harmful to them. So basically, you've seen all in all a pretty quick and painless process you've gone through. It's a lot of work, but certainly something that you're probably going to need to be doing once every 1 or 2 years, but it's something well worthwhile and keeps your pond in a good, healthy condition.
There's water in the brook running down to the stream. There's a bullfrog on the bank, baby, singing songs to me. There's fish down underneath that water, baby, saying, old man, you'll never catch me.